The soup was still steaming when it hit my dress. I remember that detail clearly, not the color of the tablecloth, not the music playing softly in the background, not even the sound of people gasping, just the heat. The way it soaked through the fabric instantly, clinging to my skin like it meant to mark me. My mother-in-law didn't flinch. She stood over me, porcelain bowl tilted in her hand, lips pressed into a thin line of satisfaction as the last drops slid off the rim and splattered onto my lap. "You're not worthy to eat with us," she said, calmly. Not loudly, not angrily, calmly. The restaurant went silent. I sat there frozen, hands resting uselessly on my thighs, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard her, that my brain was scrambling to make sense of something too cruel to process. But then I felt the heat again, and smelled the broth, and saw the way her eyes never left my face. She meant every word. Across the table, my husband didn't move. That hurt more than the soup. We were at one of those places she loved, expensive, elegant, the kind of restaurant where the waiters glide instead of walk, and the menus don't list prices. Crystal glasses caught the warm light, white linen tablecloths stretched perfectly smooth across the tables. Conversations were hushed, refined. This dinner had been her idea. "Family should eat together," she'd said when she invited us, especially now. Now meaning after my husband's promotion. Now meaning when appearances mattered. I had spent an hour getting ready, choosing a simple dress, nothing flashy, nothing that could be criticized. I'd even worn the necklace she gave me last Christmas, the one she'd watched carefully to see if I liked enough. I thought compliance might buy peace. I was wrong. "Mom," my husband finally said, his voice weak, uncertain. "What are you doing?" She set the empty bowl down slowly, deliberately, like this was all part of the evening's choreography. "Teaching her manners," she replied. Manners. I looked down at myself. The front of my dress was ruined, soup pooled on the chair beneath me. My hands trembled as I slowly pulled them away, afraid to touch anything. People were staring now, not openly, but enough. The couple at the next table had stopped eating. A waiter stood a few steps away, torn between professionalism and shock. Someone whispered my mother-in-law's name. She didn't care. "She should be grateful she was invited at all," she continued, addressing the table as if I weren't even there. "Some people forget their place." My place. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. "Excuse me," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. "I didn't do anything." She smiled then, a small, cold smile. "You exist. That's quite enough." Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let in clarity. This wasn't about soup. This wasn't about manners. This wasn't even about me, really. It was about power. My mother-in-law had always been like this, just subtler. The comments about my background, the way she corrected my pronunciation in front of others, the way she'd say things like, "You're lucky my son loves you," always framed as concern, advice, tradition. Tonight she'd dropped the pretense. My husband finally stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "This has gone too far," he said. She turned her head slowly to look at him. "Sit down," she said. He hesitated. I watched that hesitation like it was happening in slow motion. "Sit," she repeated. "You're embarrassing us." Us. Not me, not your wife. Us. He looked at me then, really looked at me. My dress, my shaking hands, my face burning with humiliation. And still he didn't say my name. "I'll talk to you later," he said to her, voice tight. "This isn't the place." She laughed softly. "Oh, this is exactly the place." The waiter finally approached, face pale. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "is everything all right here?" My mother-in-law didn't even glance at him. "Bring another bowl," she said. "This one's empty." The table froze. The waiter's eyes flicked to me, then back to her. "We're paying customers," she snapped. "Or is that suddenly a problem?" The waiter hesitated, then nodded stiffly and backed away. I pushed my chair back and stood. The movement felt strange, like my body wasn't entirely mine anymore. "I'm leaving," I said. My mother-in-law raised an eyebrow. "Running away?" "No," I replied quietly, removing myself. She laughed again. How dramatic. I reached for my bag, my fingers clumsy. "Sit down," my husband said softly, not looking at me. "Please, let's just get through dinner." That was the moment. Not the soup, not the words. That sentence. "Let's just get through dinner." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something terrifying. If I sat back down, this would become a story they laughed about later, a lesson learned, a line crossed and redrawn just enough to be crossed again. "I'm not hungry," I said. My mother-in-law waved her hand dismissively. "Obviously." I turned to leave, my legs unsteady but moving anyway. As I passed her, she leaned closer and said in a low voice only I could hear, "Remember this feeling. It's where you belong." I stopped. The restaurant felt impossibly quiet again. I turned back to her slowly. She met my gaze, unblinking. For the first time that night, I didn't look away.
"You are wrong," I said, my voice still quiet but no longer shaking. "This is just the last time you get to do this." She smiled like she was humoring a child. "We'll see." I walked out. The cold night air hit my face like a shock. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from my husband. "You didn't have to make a scene." I stared at the screen. Then another message came through. "She's upset." I laughed. A short, broken sound that surprised even me. I called a car and sank into the back seat when it arrived, staring out the window as the city blurred past. My reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. Smudged makeup, stained dress, eyes too bright. I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet, all the times I'd told myself it wasn't worth it, all the times I'd believed endurance was strength. Tonight had proven something else. Endurance only teaches people how much you can take. By the time I got home, my phone was full of messages. From my husband, from his sister, from an unknown number I knew belonged to her. I didn't open any of them. I peeled off the ruined dress, dropped it into the sink, and watched the soup swirl down the drain as I rinsed it away. She thought she'd humiliated me. She had, but humiliation has a strange side effect when it reaches its limit. It burns away fear. And as I stood there in the quiet of my own home, wrapped in a towel, staring at my reflection, I realized something with absolute certainty. What my mother-in-law did tonight didn't end me. It started something. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was replaying the moment the soup hit me, though that image did return, uninvited every time I closed my eyes, but because something deeper had been disturbed. A fault line I'd been carefully stepping over for years had finally split open, and there was no pretending it hadn't. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, buzzing every few minutes. I knew, without looking, who it was. When morning light crept through the curtains, I finally picked it up. 17 missed calls, dozens of messages, most from my husband, a few from his sister, 3 from my mother-in-law. I opened the first message from my husband. "You embarrassed my mother." I stared at the words for a long time, waiting for anger to rise. It didn't. Instead, there was a hollow calm. I scrolled. "She didn't mean it like that. You overreacted. Everyone was watching. You made things worse. Not once did he ask if I was okay. Not once did he acknowledge what had been done to me. I opened the messages from his sister next. You could have handled that better. Mom's old-fashioned. You know how she is. Why provoke her? Provoke? By sitting quietly in my chair. By existing. I finally opened the messages from my mother-in-law. There were only 3, but each one felt carefully crafted. You owe me an apology. My son is very upset. This family doesn't tolerate disrespect. I laughed then, out loud, alone in my bedroom. She had poured soup on me in public, and I was the one accused of disrespect? I typed one response, not to her, to my husband. I won't be coming home today. We need to talk, really talk, before I step back into that house. I put the phone down before I could second-guess myself. For the first time in years, I let myself ask a question I'd avoided because I was afraid of the answer. How did it ever get this far? The truth was uncomfortable. It hadn't started with soup. It had started with small things. The first time she corrected how I set the table. The first time she commented on my clothes in front of others. The first time my husband said she didn't mean anything by it. Each time I stayed silent, I thought I was choosing peace. What I was really choosing was permission. By noon, my husband showed up at my door. I knew it was him before I even looked through the peephole. He knocked the way he always did when he was annoyed, too firm to be gentle, too restrained to be angry. I didn't open the door right away. I needed a moment to brace myself. When I finally did, he stood there with his arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes full of frustration, not concern. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked in, glanced around like he was checking for witnesses, then turned back to me. "What was that last night?" he demanded. I blinked. "You mean when your mother poured soup on me?" He sighed heavily. "You know she gets dramatic." Dramatic. "She humiliated me," I said. "She was making a point," he replied. "You should have just ignored it." I stared at him. "Do you hear yourself?" "She's my mother," he said sharply. "You don't get to talk back to her like that." I felt something cold settle in my chest. I didn't talk back. I stood up. He rubbed his face. "You walked out. You made everyone uncomfortable." "I was covered in soup," I said. "I was already uncomfortable." He looked away. "That's not the point," he muttered. "No," I said, "it is." He finally looked at me again. She expects an apology. I laughed, softly this time, without humor. "For what?" "For disrespecting her in public," he said. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not apologizing." His eyes widened. "You're choosing this hill to die on?" I stepped closer to him. "She told me I wasn't worthy to eat at the table. She poured food on me like I was nothing. And you're asking me to apologize?" "She raised me," he snapped. "She's always been like this." "And you've always let her," I said. That landed. He straightened. "So now this is my fault?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Partly." He stared at me like I'd slapped him. "I defended you. I told her it went too far." "You asked me to sit back down. You asked me to endure it quietly so you wouldn't have to deal with her." Silence filled the room. Then he said something that made everything very clear. "You should have known better than to push her." Push her. That was the moment the marriage cracked. Not loudly, but irrevocably. "I didn't push her," I said. "She pushed me, and I finally stopped falling." He scoffed. "So what now? You're gonna cut off my family?" I took a breath. "I'm going to stop accepting abuse." "She's not abusive," he said immediately. "She's just strict." I nodded slowly. "If a stranger had done that to me, would you call it strict?" He didn't answer. "Would you tell me to apologize then?" I pressed. Still nothing. "That's what I thought," I said. He grabbed his jacket. "You're being unreasonable." "Maybe, but I'm done being compliant." He paused at the door. "If you don't apologize, she'll never forgive you." I looked at him calmly. Then we're finally being honest about the cost. He left without another word. The apartment felt eerily quiet after he was gone. I sat down on the couch and let the weight of everything sink in. I cried then, not loud heaving sobs, but slow tears that came from exhaustion more than pain. Exhaustion from years of explaining, minimizing, excusing. When my phone buzzed again, I almost ignored it. Almost, but the name on the screen surprised me. Restaurant manager. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Hi, this is Daniel, the manager from La Couronne. I wanted to check on you." I straightened. "On me?"
"Yes," he said gently. "What happened last night was unacceptable. I wanted to apologize." I swallowed. "Thank you." "We've already taken action," he continued. "Your mother-in-law is no longer welcome at our establishment." I blinked. "What?" "We don't tolerate that kind of behavior," he said firmly. "Several guests complained, and one of our senior staff witnessed everything." My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but something close to relief. "I appreciate that," I said. "There's more," he added. "The woman she humiliated, that was you, correct?" "Yes." He paused. "I just wanted you to know you weren't the problem. Everyone could see that." After we hung up, I sat there in silence, letting his words sink in. Everyone could see that. Everyone except the people who were supposed to protect me. By evening, my mother-in-law made her next move. She showed up. I heard the knock through the door, sharp, authoritative, like she expected immediate compliance. I didn't open it. She knocked again, then called. I let it ring. Finally, she shouted through the door, "I know you're in there. Don't be childish." Childish. I leaned against the door, heart pounding, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "You're not welcome here." Her laughter echoed in the hallway. "You don't get to decide that." "Yes," I said, "I do." She went quiet for a moment. Then her voice dropped, sharp and dangerous. "You think last night was bad?" she said. "You've embarrassed me. I will not let this go." I closed my eyes. "Neither will I," replied. She left shortly after, heels clicking down the hallway like punctuation. I slid down against the door and sat on the floor, shaking, not with fear, but adrenaline. This wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time, I wasn't dreading what came next, because the line had been crossed so clearly, so publicly, that there was no going back to pretending. The first thing my mother-in-law did after leaving my hallway was call everyone. I didn't know that yet, not until my phone started lighting up with names I hadn't seen in months, numbers I recognized but never saved, family friends, distant relatives, even people from my husband's workplace. The narrative was already being rewritten. I could feel it. By mid-morning, the first call came from my husband's aunt. "I just wanted to check on you," she said in a tone that pretended to be gentle. "Your mother-in-law is very upset." I closed my eyes. "Is she?" I replied. "Well," the aunt continued, "she said you humiliated her in public, that you caused a scene at the restaurant." I laughed quietly. "Did she mention the soup?" There was a pause. "She said there was an accident." An accident. I felt something harden in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, but resolve. "It wasn't an accident," I said, "and if anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying." The aunt cleared her throat. "Families have misunderstandings." "No," I replied. "Families don't pour hot food on someone and call it discipline." The line went silent. Then she said, "I didn't know it was that bad." "I weren't supposed to," I said. "That's the point." We hung up shortly after. By noon, my sister-in-law texted, "Mom's crying. You really hurt her." I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, "She hurt me first." No response came. That silence told me something important. They weren't interested in the truth. They were interested in restoring order. And in their version of order, I was supposed to absorb pain quietly so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. That afternoon, my husband came back. This time, he didn't knock. He used his key. I was standing in the kitchen when I heard the door open. "You can't keep doing this," he said immediately. I turned slowly. Doing what? Turning everyone against my mother. I blinked. "I didn't say a word to anyone." He scoffed. "People are talking." "Yes," I said calmly, "about what she did." "She feels attacked," he snapped. I leaned against the counter. So did I, except I was actually attacked. He rubbed his temples. "Why can't you just apologize and move on?" There it was again. Apologize. Endure. Reset. "I'm not apologizing," I said. He looked at me like I'd just said something unthinkable. "She won't forgive you," he warned. "I'm not asking her to." His face hardened. "You're tearing this family apart." I took a slow breath. "No," I said. "I'm refusing to be the glue anymore." That stopped him. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means everything worked as long as I stayed quiet, as long as I absorbed the disrespect so no one else had to confront it." "That's not fair," he said. "It's accurate," I replied. He shook his head. "You're exaggerating." I walked toward him, close enough that he had to meet my eyes. If a stranger poured soup on me in public and said I wasn't worthy to eat, what would you call it?
He hesitated. "Answer me," I said. "Assault," he muttered. "Then why is it different when your mother does it?" He opened his mouth, closed it. I pressed on. "Why am I expected to apologize for reacting to something you admit was wrong?" He didn't answer. That silence hurt more than yelling would have. "Say it," I said softly. "Say you'll protect me." He looked away. "I can't choose between you and my mother," he said. I felt my heart sink, not in surprise but in confirmation. "I didn't ask you to choose," I said. "I asked you to stand with me." He picked up his jacket. "I need space." I replied. He left again. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because I couldn't go into the bedroom, but because I didn't want to lie in a space that still expected me to fold. The next day, things escalated. My mother-in-law sent a group message, not to me, about me. Someone forwarded it to me with a single line. "Thought you should see this." The message read, "I raised my son better than this. Some people marry into families without understanding respect. I will not be bullied in my own life." Bullied. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I did something I'd never done before. I didn't respond privately. I didn't call to clarify. I replied publicly. Just one sentence. "Respect doesn't involve humiliation or hot soup." That was it. No insults, no explanations, no apologies. The group went silent. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was her. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was calm, controlled, and furious underneath. "You think you're clever," she said. "You think you've won something. Let me make this very clear. You will not turn my family against me." I deleted it. An hour later, my husband's boss called him into a meeting. I didn't know that yet. I found out that evening when he came home pale and quiet. "They talked to me at work," he said. "Who?" I asked, already knowing. "My mother and my uncle." My chest tightened. "About what?" "About you," he said. "About how unstable you've been. About how you're trying to isolate me." I laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "She went to your workplace?" He nodded. "She said she's worried about me." I felt something cold slide into place. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. It was escalation. "That's not concern," I said. "That's sabotage." "She was trying to protect me," he insisted weakly. "From what?" I asked. "From the consequences of her own behavior?" He didn't respond. I took a deep breath. "This is serious," I said. "She crossed a line." He sat down heavily. "What do you want me to do?" I looked at him for a long moment. "I want you to tell her to stop, completely. No more calls, no more messages, no more involvement." "And if I don't?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "Then I'll do what I need to do to protect myself." He looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means boundaries," I said, "and distance." "You're threatening to leave?" I shook my head. "I'm telling you what happens if this continues." Silence filled the room. Finally, he said, "She won't listen." I nodded. "Then this won't end quietly." That night, I made a call of my own, not to family, to a lawyer. Just a consultation, just information. The woman on the phone listened carefully as I explained what had happened. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said one sentence that changed everything. "What you described isn't just emotional abuse, it's public harassment." I felt my throat tighten. "You're allowed to document this," she continued, "and you're allowed to protect yourself." After the call ended, I sat in silence. For the first time, the word allowed echoed in my head. I didn't need permission anymore. The next morning, my mother-in-law made her boldest move yet. She showed up at my workplace. Not my home, not my husband's office. Mine. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked and whispered, "There's a woman here demanding to see you. She says it's urgent. Family." My stomach dropped. I stood slowly, and as I walked toward the lobby, every instinct in me screamed that something irreversible was about to happen. Because when someone is willing to humiliate you in public, threaten your livelihood, and rewrite reality,
They don't stop until someone forces them to. The lobby felt colder than usual, not physically, though the air conditioning hummed a little louder than I remembered, but emotionally, like the temperature dropped the moment I stepped off the elevator and saw her. My mother-in-law stood near the reception desk, perfectly composed, dressed in a tailored cream blazer and pearl earrings. She looked exactly the way she always wanted to look in public, respectable, controlled, untouchable. The receptionist looked relieved when she saw me. "She insists on speaking with you," she whispered. "She wouldn't leave." "I'll handle it," I said. My mother-in-law turned the instant she heard my voice. "There you are," she said, smiling tightly. "I've been waiting." I didn't return the smile. "This isn't appropriate," I said quietly. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she replied, waving a hand. "I just want to talk. Family matters." Several people nearby slowed their steps, pretended to check their phones, listened anyway. I gestured toward a quieter corner of the lobby. "You have 5 minutes." She followed, heels clicking sharply against the floor. "You've caused quite a stir," she said as soon as we stopped, "running your mouth to everyone." "I haven't spoken to anyone. You have." She scoffed. "I was forced to defend myself." "By coming to my workplace?" I asked. "Yes," she said simply. "You weren't answering me." I took a slow breath. "This ends now," I said. She laughed, soft, condescending. "You don't get to decide that." I met her gaze. "You poured soup on me in public and told me I wasn't worthy to eat with you. You contacted my husband's employer, and now you're here." She leaned closer. "And yet, here you are, still standing, still married, still trying to make trouble." That word again, trouble. "You think people believe you? They know me. They know my family. You're just emotional." Emotional. I felt something settle inside me. Not rage, not fear. Clarity. I said, "You should leave." She smiled. Or what? Before I could answer, a voice cut in. Is there a problem here? I turned. It was my director. Tall, calm, observant. He looked from me to her, taking in the tension instantly. My mother-in-law straightened, slipping into her public persona. "Oh, no problem at all," she said sweetly. "I'm just here to speak with my daughter-in-law." My director raised an eyebrow. "During business hours? In our lobby?" She laughed lightly. "Family emergencies don't keep schedules." I stepped forward. "She's harassing me." The word landed like a dropped plate. My mother-in-law's smile faltered for half a second. "That's a strong accusation," she said. "It's an accurate one." My director's expression hardened slightly. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave."
She turned to him, offended. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said calmly. "If there's an issue, it can be handled through proper channels, not here." She looked at me, eyes flashing. "You did this." "No," I said. "You did." People were openly watching now. The receptionist, 2 coworkers, a security guard who had moved closer. My mother-in-law realized it too. This wasn't a restaurant. This wasn't family property. This was a place where she had no authority. She straightened her shoulders. "Fine," she said coldly, "but this isn't over." She turned and walked toward the doors, heels striking the floor like gunshots. Before she reached the exit, my director spoke again. "Ma'am," she stopped. "If you return uninvited, security will escort you out and we will document the incident." Her face flushed. She said nothing. The doors closed behind her. The lobby exhaled. My director turned to me. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my hands were trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. "Yes," I said. "Thank you." "We'll file a report," he said. "You shouldn't have to deal with that." I swallowed. "I appreciate it." He placed a hand briefly on my shoulder. "If you need time, take it." I went back upstairs and locked myself in the restroom, leaning against the sink as my reflection stared back at me. My face was pale, but my eyes were steady. She'd tried to corner me, and she'd failed. That afternoon, the consequences began. Security footage was saved, an incident report was filed, HR was notified. Not because I asked for vengeance, because this was no longer private. When I got home that evening, my husband was waiting. He stood in the living room, phone in hand, face ashen. "She came to your work," he said. "Yes," I replied. "They called me, your director, HR." I set my bag down. "Good." He stared at me. "This has gone too far." "Yes," I said, "it has." "She's my mother," he said, voice breaking, "and I'm your wife, or was." The word hung between us. He swallowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this stops, now, or I walk." His eyes widened. "You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm giving you a boundary and telling you the consequence." He paced once, dragging a hand through his hair. "She didn't mean—" "Stop," I said. "Just stop." He froze. "I will not live like this," I continued. "I will not be humiliated, threatened, or undermined so you don't have to confront her." Silence. Then, quietly, "She raised me." "And now you're an adult," I replied. He sank onto the couch. "If I cut her off—" "I didn't say cut her off," I said. "I said protect me." He looked up. "And if she doesn't stop?" I took a breath. "Then I leave," I said. He stared at the floor for a long time. "I don't know if I can do that," he admitted. I nodded. "Then I know what I need to do." That night, I packed a bag. Not dramatically, methodically. Clothes, documents, my laptop. He watched silently from the doorway. "Where will you go?" he asked. "A friend's," I said. He nodded. "How long?" "I don't know," I replied. "Until I'm safe." The word landed heavily. I paused at the door and looked back at him. I loved you, I said, but love doesn't survive betrayal. He didn't respond. The drive away felt surreal. Streetlights blurred. My chest felt tight but clear. My phone buzzed at a red light. A message from my mother-in-law. You think you've won? You've destroyed my family. I didn't reply, because for the first time, I understood something completely. She didn't lose control because I fought her. She lost control because I stopped playing the role she assigned me. The first night away from my marriage, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I was happy, not because I felt victorious, but because I finally felt safe. My friend's apartment was small, warm, quiet. No looming expectations, no footsteps in the hallway that made my stomach tighten, no phone buzzing every few minutes with someone demanding explanations. Just silence, the kind that lets your body unclench. In the morning, I woke up to sunlight instead of dread, and that's when reality started to settle in. I wasn't taking space, I wasn't cooling off. I had drawn a line so clear that there was no stepping back over it without losing myself. My phone was full when I checked it. Messages from my husband, missed calls from his sister, one long voicemail from his mother that I didn't open. I scrolled past all of them and opened an email instead, from HR. Polite, professional, precise. They were confirming the incident report, confirming security footage had been saved, confirming that if my mother-in-law returned, law enforcement would be contacted. Reading it felt surreal. For years, I had been told, directly and indirectly, that I was too sensitive, that I misunderstood her, that if I just tried harder, stayed quieter, apologized faster, things would smooth over. And here were complete strangers, people with no emotional investment in my family, calling it exactly what it was: harassment, intimidation, unacceptable behavior. That validation hit harder than any apology ever could. That afternoon, my husband came to see me. He didn't announce himself, didn't knock dramatically, just stood outside my friend's building until I agreed to come down. He looked exhausted. Not angry, not defensive, just hollow. I told her to stop, he said immediately. I didn't respond. I told her she can't contact you, he continued, that she can't show up anywhere near you. I crossed my arms. And she lost it, he said. She said, you're manipulating me, that you're trying to destroy the family. I nodded slowly. Did you tell her she poured soup on me? He flinched. Yes. And? She said you provoked her, he said quietly. I exhaled. And what did you say? I asked. He hesitated. That pause told me everything. I told her she was wrong, he said finally, that what she did crossed a line. But, I pressed, but she's still my mother. There it was, the same sentence, the same wall. I felt a strange calm wash over me. I'm not asking you to stop loving her, I said. I'm asking you to stop letting her hurt me. He nodded. I know. No, I said gently, you don't. Because if you did, this wouldn't still be a conversation. He looked at me like he wanted to argue. Then his shoulders sagged. I don't know how to untangle this, he admitted. I met his eyes. Then I can't stay tangled in it with you. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he said, Are you leaving me? I thought about the question carefully. I already left, I replied. What happens next depends on what you choose. He swallowed hard. I need time. I nodded. Take it. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. That's part of the boundary, I said. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I never thought it would come to this, he whispered. Neither did I replied, but I always knew it could.
He left without another word. That evening, my mother-in-law's final move arrived, not in person, not through family, but through something she thought she could control: reputation. She sent emails to extended family, to friends, to community members, painting herself as the victim, a mother losing her son, a woman disrespected by an ungrateful daughter-in-law, a family torn apart by someone who refuses to know her place. It might have worked once, but not now, because too many people had seen her, at the restaurant, at my workplace, through the aftermath, and the truth has a way of spreading quietly when people stop protecting lies. One by one, the responses came back to her, not publicly, privately, people declining invitations, people not replying, people distancing themselves without explanation. She noticed. I know she did, because 2 weeks later I received one final message from her, not angry, not cruel, desperate. "You've taken everything from me." I read it twice, then deleted it, because that was the lie she would carry forever. I hadn't taken anything, I had simply stopped giving. The legal process moved slowly after that. A formal separation, a written agreement regarding contact, clear documentation. My husband didn't fight it. That hurt in its own way, but it also confirmed what I already knew. If protecting me had ever been his priority, I wouldn't have needed paperwork. Months passed. The restaurant incident faded from gossip into memory. My workplace stabilized. My life became quieter, not empty, but intentional. I moved into my own place.
Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every object inside it was chosen by me. No one commented on how I decorated. No one corrected how I set the table. I ate where I wanted, when I wanted, without fear. One evening, as I sat alone with a bowl of soup, homemade, still steaming, I laughed softly at the irony. The thing she'd used to humiliate me had become a symbol of something else entirely: comfort, choice, autonomy. I thought about the woman I had been that night in the restaurant, frozen, ashamed, trying to disappear, and the woman I was now, standing, clear-eyed, unafraid of being seen. My mother-in-law believed worth was something she could grant or take away. She was wrong. Worth isn't decided at a table. It isn't proven through endurance. It isn't earned by obedience. Worth exists the moment you decide you won't accept being treated as less. She poured soup on me and told me I wasn't worthy to eat with them. What she didn't realize was that she had just shown me exactly where I no longer belonged, and leaving that table didn't break me. It saved me.